The finale of Gen V Season 2 is finally here, and with Thomas Godolkin being fully healed, this episode was focused on his master plan of getting closer to being able to control Marie whilst also culling the herd and ridding the students that he deemed not worthy of studying at God U. With several cameos from the boys, Annabeth's vision being utterly useless and Marie channeling her inner Victoria Newman. Let's take a look at this finale, break it down, and I'll share what I thought of it. Here is Gen V Season 2 Episode 8, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Thomas Godolkin. The episode essentially opened up with us seeing how Thomas Godolkin managed to survive the fire that occurred in the lab in 1967, and he was able to do so by awaking whilst in the midst of it and giving himself some of the V1 that the rest of the scientists took, which led to the chaos ensuing. I did find it a bit strange that once he awoke he decided to do that, considering that the rest of his colleagues did that and had major side effects, but I guess each to their own. Maybe he thought that he was a special one and it wouldn't impact him. Godolkin had a new lease of life following being healed by Marie, and he was essentially experiencing everything for the first time all over again as he'd been controlling Dean Cipher for around 30 years. So it was now as if he was born again. His relationship with Sister Sage was actually a lot more advanced than what we initially thought, and she wanted him to move in with her so that they could then progress forward with their plan together. However, what she didn't know was that there was a secret plan that he had to cull the herd of all of the non-worthy students. Sage wanted to take it slow with introducing Godolkin to Homelander because, as we know, Homelander can be insecure and view other powerful supes as a threat, ultimately taking them out because his ego can't handle it. So with Godolkin going live on social media, that was the wrong way for him to go about it, and as we saw, it led Homelander to reach out to Sister Sage with a phone call which he ignored. Godolkin started his culling of the herd by planning a class where he promised the supes that attended that they could potentially make it into the top 10 rankings and ultimately progress onto the 7. But in reality, all he wanted to do was wipe the weak supes out group by group until he was left with only the strongest. Sage didn't agree with the approach that Godolkin had, and the look in her eyes spoke 1,000 words. Godolkin was essentially controlling as many supes as he could at once because he wanted to evolve himself so he could eventually control Marie, as that was something that he was never able to do when she was inside of Elmira despite trying on multiple occasions. And then he felt as though once he was able to control Marie, then he'd be able to control the other Odessa baby, which was Homelander. Showing that Godolkin was just a man who simply wanted to play God. Godolkin was unhappy with Homelander leading the supe supremacy because he felt his insecurities and the lack of his ability in allowing anybody strong around him was giving the supes a bad name and stopping them from being the strongest that they could possibly be. So he wanted to control Homelander so that the mindset would then shift. That was ultimately why Sister Sage left the door open on Polarity's cell when she went in and spoke with him, because she knew that she couldn't let Godolkin do that. Godolkin even killing off the weak supes was something that Homelander wouldn't like, because if there were weak supes that were in existence, it was good for him because there was more noise around him and there wasn't just greatness that was considered up and coming. It felt like Sage was taunting Polarity when she brought up his wife and his son who had died, but in reality she was just relating to the pain to some degree because she knew that Godolkin was going to die that day because of her actions. She loved Thomas Godolkin and was willing to move in with him, but she couldn't let his madness take over and it hurt her to have to do that. She left the door open for Polarity so that he'd be able to escape after being impacted by what Sister Sage said, and then ultimately disrupt Godolkin's lecture that he was doing. With Godolkin being the ultimate puppet master, we saw that he was able to gain control of Marie, and he had the group right where he wanted them, on the ground while Marie was on the cusp of killing them. But when Polarity stormed in and launched a massive piece of stone at him, it allowed Marie to gain back her control, and she ultimately Vicky Newman Godolkin, meaning that he was actually now dead for good. I get why he had to die, but at the same time I kinda wish he made it into The Boys Season 5. His encounters with Homelander would have genuinely been perfect. So Godolkin's arc turned out to be pretty inconsequential other than the fact that it got Marie to tap into the full potential of her powers and gave her the level up that she needed to be the most powerful version of herself that she could possibly be. Marie and the group. When it came to Marie and the group, within this episode, we saw Marie battling with the fact that she was considered to be extremely powerful. Personally, I don't understand why she kept saying, "No, I'm not special," when she quite literally was the only surviving baby from Project Odessa other than Homelander. It was really confusing, and honestly, it just made her character slightly annoying in the finale. The group were fully aware of what Godolkin was planning on doing with culling the students that he didn't deem worthy, and they came up with a plan to essentially hijack one of his classes, and then once inside of it, use the likes of Harper to gain Godolkin's powers for a brief moment, release the hold that he had on all of the students, and then allow them to leave. This was something that the group were able to do by using Black Hole and being absorbed by him so that they could sneak in, and then once Godolkin was fully underway, he released them all. Once they were then out, the plan went smoothly, however it backfired when Marie was taken over by Godolkin. There was a key theme that was explored in this episode, and it was about the many versus the singular and how success can come when working together, even if it includes the people that aren't deemed worthy or as powerful as the others. For example, when Godolkin lost control of all of the soups that he wanted to control, Marie went over to him and said, "We beat you, all of us, even the useless ones." I'm guessing that's why Marie had the complex within her mind on whether or not she wanted to be viewed as special, because she was a team player and didn't want to feel like she was making anybody else feel inferior. We even saw Marie apologizing to Kate in this episode, and she allowed Kate to regain her powers, which did prove to be advantageous in the final plan because Kate needed to use them to allow Marie to enter the training room and confront Godolkin. A relationship that wasn't necessarily in its best place was Jordan and Marie right at the end. Jordan said to Marie how they just wanted to be friends, and despite loving them, they just knew that it wouldn't work. Jordan felt abandoned by Marie on several occasions throughout this season of the show, and they knew that it was always going to be that way. So they essentially cut their losses and said how they'd rather be happy with being a friend to Marie, rather than being a partner and being mad all of the time because they kept leaving them. With Godolkin being defeated, it led the group to go on the run and look for Stan Edgar's place, as Polarity told them that with Vought on the way, and with them being viewed as Starlighters, it meant that they'd most likely end up inside the likes of Elmira again. Once outside of the grounds of the university, Starlight and A Train appeared and essentially welcomed them into part of the Resistance, which shows that the group are going to have a large involvement in the boys' final season when it eventually airs next year. They're fully integrated now, and there's no going back. Dean Cipher. Poor Doug. He was trapped for 30 years inside of his own body because Godolkin was controlling him, and then when he finally got that sweet taste of freedom down the highway, he ended up being killed by Black Noir in such a brutal fashion. Dean Cipher's involvement in this episode felt like it was used as a passageway for there to be a final tribute to Chance in this season of the show. Cipher mentioned how Andre was the greatest hero that he'd ever seen, and he reminisced with Polarity over his son and just how great he was. It felt like a fitting tribute, and calling him the greatest hero that he'd ever seen was something that you could tell transcended the meaning on paper and was about the real-life person behind the character. My review of the episode. Now, whilst I did really enjoy this finale for what it was, there are a few things that I feel like I didn't like about it, and I'll get them out of the way before I go on to talk about what I did like about it. First off is the runtime. It was around 40 minutes, and in my eyes, that's just far too short for a season finale. It almost felt like there wasn't enough time to allow the pacing of the episode to feel smooth and like we could feel fully immersed within it. When episodes are on the shorter side, it feels like you lose a lot of that conversation and travel time, which can often develop the plot forward in a different way and ultimately allow the audience to understand the characters on a deeper level too. The characters in this season of Gen V just felt a little bit surface level, and because the episodes were quite short, it meant that complexes like Marie not wanting to be called special, or Marie and Jordan's relationship, or Sam being pushed to the side completely were side effects of that. I also felt like with Godolkin being killed in the way that he was, it basically made this entire season of Gen V pointless, other than the fact that Marie found out that she was an Odessa product and she was now far more powerful. There weren't truly any other wider consequences, which takes away a lot of the value for me. I know Marie being as powerful as what she is something that's going to connect into The Boys Season 5, but 8 episodes and the death of what could have been a great villain to do that. I don't know, I'm a bit disappointed in that. Right, now on to what I liked about it. Well, Godolkin as a villain was a character that I did really enjoy watching in his short and brief appearances. When he had the characters up dancing and was controlling them all like a puppet master, it was just so haunting to look at, and we saw just how powerful he was. The mindset that he had of just wanting a pure, strong breed of superheroes was dangerous, and like I said, I think it was a shame that he's a character that was relatively short-lived considering how important it felt like he was going to be. Something that I've been a fan of not only from this episode, but the entirety of this season is the character Polarity. Making him have a much larger involvement, integrating him into the story more, and healing his powers really allowed the character to shine, and I'm hoping we're going to see him in The Boys because I think he'd make a great addition to that show. I also really like the fact that the entirety of Marie's actions and Starlight finding out about Odessa was planned by Sister Sage. Sage knew that Starlight would go to Marie, and then Marie wouldn't be able to stop herself from going to the school, which then ultimately led her to healing Godolkin. It showed just how intelligent Sage is and how valuable of a character she is. When it comes to how I feel this season was when compared to season 1, I think season 1 was quite a bit better than this season. I feel like there was more time on campus, we got to see other students a little bit more, and all of the characters had what felt like a fair amount of screen time. Within this season, I just feel many of the characters fell to the side slightly and we missed out on some great chemistry. I did really enjoy this season of the show though, I just don't think it was a touch on the first season and it wasn't as good as The Boys either. It was a good way of getting a bit of The Boys universe in whilst waiting for the show return. So the next stop is The Boys Season 5. So, there you have it, Gen V Season 2 Episode 8, Ending Explained. If you want to see every episode of Gen V Season 2 being broken down, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.